All right, good afternoon. It is Friday, May 21st, 2021. This is a virtual regular meeting of the City Commissioners of Rehoboth Beach. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 2:00 p.m. on the dot. I'd like to thank everybody for being here. We're going to start off with a roll call. Commissioner Susan Gay.
Here.
Commissioner Richard Byrne.
Here.
Commissioner Ed Chernowski.
Here.
Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here.
And I'm Mayor Stan Mills. We have enough that we have a quorum. We're able to formally conduct business. Commissioners Caluzzi and Gossett are expected shortly. Again, thank you all for being here. Thank you to those that are watching. Also, thank you to those that are participants and pre-registered to be able to speak. Those persons that will be speaking today, of course, will be Debbie File with her presentation, Carol Everhart of the Rehoboth Beach Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce, Suzanne Good, citizen, Dan Slagle and Greer Mandeville with Rehoboth Beach Main Street, citizen Walter Brittingham, and Sally Foreman, founder and president of SOLA 3. Thank you all for pre-registering to speak. I will obviously be calling on you at appropriate times during the meeting to solicit your comments and feedback. So thanks again. With that, I want to remind everybody that if you go to the city website and on the right side, click on the legislative portal, that'll take you into the portal where you should be able to click on the date of today's meeting and access the agenda today. And within the agenda, you click on support documents, so that you can actually see a lot of the support documents that we have right in front of us. Also want to recognize the support personnel. It takes a lot of people to run these meetings. I'd like to recognize the City Manager Sharon Lynn, City Solicitor Glenn Mandalis, Officer Lieutenant Jamie Riddle, Kevin Williams, Public Works Director, Lynn Cohen, Communications Specialist, and representing the IT Department, Max Amby. Also, I think Ann Womack is down in her office. Thank you all for being here and contributing to make this a successful meeting. With that, we're going to go to approval of the minutes. Actually, correspondence. I don't have any correspondence identified, and there's none embedded in the agenda. Next item is approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes in front of us to consider approval. There's a special meeting held on May 10th, 2021. There's a special meeting held on May 19th, 2021, and an executive session held on May 19th, 2021. Are there any changes that need to be noted for any of those 3 sets of minutes?
Mayor, I'm not sure the executive session was on the 19th. That's the only thing. And it might be right in the minutes. I don't have them in front of me, but on the agenda, it says on the executive session on the 19th, and the 19th was just 2 days ago. And
that is, you are correct, Commissioner Gay. Actually in the minutes themselves for the executive session, that corrected date is May 10th.
Okay. Yeah.
So we'll be considering executive session minutes for May 10th, special meeting minutes for May 10th, and special meeting minutes for May 19th. That's the correct. Are there any changes to any of those 3 sets of minutes?
I move approval with the one name date correction that Commissioner Gay pointed out.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Byrne to accept the minutes in front of us as approved. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Show your hand if you would. It's easier for me to see.
Aye.
And so we don't have to ask for no's because it's unanimous among us that we approve the minutes. Thank you very much. With that, I would like to take a few things out of order today. I would like to next go to number 11, presentation by Debbie File, Senior Project Associate at KCI, on the status of the City Comprehensive Development Plan, update including mapping analysis issues. Debbie has to make a run for it after this presentation, and so I said we would put her up earlier. And then just to alert everybody, following that presentation, I'd like to go to the HB 146 discussion, because that involves having city staff here with us, and I'd like to have her in and out as easily as possible also. Then we will resume starting at the city manager's report. So with that, I'll turn the camera over to Debbie File, please.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to talking with the commissioners and the community today on the status of the CDP. Can everybody hear me clearly?
You're fine, Debbie. Thank you.
And I'm assuming I'm going to present, correct, Max?
That's correct.
Okay, let's go from the beginning of the slideshow. So we presented this last Friday to the Planning Commission. I just want to let everybody know where we're at, what our status is, and some new updates. So I appreciate the opportunity today, and especially rearranging the schedule for me. Can everybody see the presentation clearly?
No, it's not up yet.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go back. Sorry about that. I'll just go on to slide number 2, and I didn't even. All right, so I believe this, just double check. How about now?
There we go. Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, we're good.
are we, is it better in presentation mode there?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. I should have tested this. I apologize for your time. So the current CDP schedule, the plan was due in July of 2020. For those that may have not participated or been around or understood, we received an extension number 1 that was granted until January 23rd, 2021. We received a second extension that took us to July 23rd, 2021. So in between those times, COVID was a large hit, which I'll get into with some information and some mapping. So today we're divulging what has transpired since then and where we're going. So we have had continual communication with Office of State Planning Coordination. So that's been continually quarterly, at least not monthly. And we represented the mayor, myself, the city manager, the city solicitor, and the Planning Commission chair, presented on April 21st to the State Cabinet Committee. The reason that needed to go to the State Cabinet Committee is Office of State Planning is only allowed to give 2 extensions. And if you needed the final additional extension, you must go in front of cabinet secretaries. That includes Secretary of DENREC, Secretary of Department of Ag, Transportation, Housing, etc. So that got elevated to that level. The city request was supported by Office of State Planning Coordination. So they were very involved and in tune with where we are at with our mapping and our hurdles that we're working through. And based on our presentation and support from Office of State Planning, and we need to thank Connie Holland. It was one of her last official acts before she retired to support the city of Rehoboth in this endeavor. And we were approved for our final extension of July 2022. So one of the questions I get that I thought I'd just address here is, why do we need it for a year? I'm going to address that further on in the schedule and go through the detailed schedule with you, but we're willing to give the city a year, and based on reopening in public meetings, we felt that that was needed to make the project where it was not hurried and expedited in the public's hands or the Board of Commissioners or Planning Commission. So during this time, you've heard, and this is probably the first time we've revealed this kind of information, you've heard that we've had some mapping determination issues between county and city parcel data. KCI analysis late fall or between the city records and the county records, and this is mapping. So this is not about assessments, this is not about taxes, this is not about zoning, it's specifically parcel data. Out of that, we found 133 discrepancies. I'm going to go into the layers of discrepancies that we're going to categorize them, but when you have a discrepancy in a parcel or land record, it's very intense data research. Unfortunately, with COVID restrictions on staff and record keeping on both the county, state, and municipal level, they were paper records and people weren't in the offices. Some of these are handwritten deeds, parcels, and surveys. So it was intense data research with limited access. So we've had ongoing coordination, which you've heard me say. We also gotten research assistance from Sussex County and Denrick. So all the government levels are working together on this project, which is very refreshing and very new for government in some ways. So out of the 133 discrepancies, 27 of them, the county is researching now, and they are making headway on documentation and supportive material needed, in which direction we go. 22, we're still researching between the city and KCI, and we've got that down to about half as of last week. 24 of these discrepancies are beachfront properties, which we categorized. 41 are lakefront properties, and then 19 have been resolved or corrected. And I'm going to get a little bit more further and show you some examples on the next slides. So when we talk about beachfront properties, you're going to see this depiction. This was very, very early and completed in December. Some items have been rectified and researched. What you see in the red is the county parcel data layer. So once again, I want to say data is only good as the information behind it and or the person inputting it and making it into a map. So there's several areas for discrepancy. So the county is in the red, the city is black lines, gray shaded. So you see between those two documents, we have some areas that could really determine some land use decisions. Some of the properties, as we know, in former presentations and former projects and funding applications, that some of the land is owned all the way to close to the ocean. But some of these parcels were split, some are smaller, some are large, as you see. And we felt that this was determined to be further analyzed. It might require contact property owners. It does not mean that things are wrong. What it means is there's just a difference between the county and the city, and we want the proper documentation to make sure the information is correct. So when we give you the maps, and there's 12 maps in the comprehensive plan, it shows the land use, sea level rise. So on some of these, sea level rise might like very small. On other ones, it might wipe out the entire property. So it's very important that we depict accurate information on the parcels. This is a few examples of the beachfront properties. Then we get into the Silver Lake examples. So these are examples of properties around Silver Lake where, because of riparian buffers or ownership, or as the state owns the lake around Silver Lake, that there's discrepancies. Some properties have two pieces of property in one database, others are one parcel. Some are just off 5 or 6 feet, which isn't bad. However, in doing this project, we found that the city was very proactive and was awarded a DENREC surface water matching grant for the development of the lake's management plan. And that's with the United States Army Corps of Engineers. They're developing the plan with assistance from Rehoboth. And as you know, it's going to acquire DENREC, the county, and Dewey Beach. So one of their scoped items is establish an ownership of jurisdiction of the shoreline around Silver Lake around Silver Lake. So we didn't have any issues around the other lake, but around Silver Lake, we have a couple. And we shared our data just recently with the city because we did not do a complete assessment, KCI, once we knew that this project was punted to somebody else, meaning the Army Corps of Engineers and a funded project. We just shared the data with a city staff member that they can use that information if they want. There's 2 layers of GIS. So during that project, which you're aware because you approved the funding application, during that project, these parcels will be addressed. There might be a discrepancy in the timeline of the comprehensive plan, but the state agencies and the state cabinet secretaries are willing to work with us on the timeline. So that project involves all the properties around the lake that were discrepancies. And remember, we're still only at 155. The average discrepancy example, I just pulled a few to show you. Once again, the city parcels now are in the pink and red, and the first map, which is the county documents, are in the yellow. So you'll see the picture on the top that's labeled D3. According to the city parcel data, that's actually 2 pieces of property. According to the county, it's 1. So when I say it that simple, we are not, and I want to reassure everybody because we do have legal advice on this, we are not taking a color crayon or a red marker and just making up a line of what we feel we want to do. We're actually pulling the county, that's recordations from the county, the plans, the surveys, the deeds, which sometimes are different, depending on who prepares them, with the city records, and we're making sure who authorized the split, who authorized a combination, which is the correct data, And then a decision will be, rendered on which the property, which parcel boundary layer is correct. Will it have ramifications on property owners? It could in certain areas. We're just making sure that we're going to be using one database. And moving forward, we're using the county database, which is all the other municipalities in the state of Delaware use the county-based parcel. When you have a piece of property and you want to split it into one or two, you have to go through the proper municipality to get approval, reported at the county. So the gap stop is at the county. And it's the city's job to make sure that those documents are reflected properly. The property below, you're going to see we have some adjustment in lot lines. We have, again, a situation where it's one parcel that looks to another, and it looks like one lot line was removed. One of these gets looked at individually. We want to make sure they're right. And once again, we are not making decisions on, without proper documentation. We do anticipate this is going to involve some property owner meetings, depending on what the outcome is. So if we have a piece of property that was split, it was signed off by the city, it was recorded by the county, the property owner signed it as well, it's a split, and we need to update the city records. Some are that easy if you get the proper documentation with all the proper signatures. So that gives you an example on the average discrepancy examples. So how does that work once we finish these mapping, just the mapping discrepancies? We're still in the mapping and plan update. We have about 65 to 80% of the plan written. However, the longer this goes on with this scope and schedule change, which we've all been aware has, been laboring, the more information that's coming out. So what we have done is we have cataloged, and Commissioner Gay is aware of this, but we cataloged all the documents and planning plans that we have from the state and the county. So state strategies was just adopted in October. We're pulling in their data. The draft did not have it in there. So we're pulling in 2020, 2021 data that's available. So that gives us, once again, to rewrite those drafts and bring up more current information. Our second phase here is an internal draft review and input. Third is external to everybody else. The fourth is a state certification. I'm going to go into these just a little more detail so we know nothing has changed other than the extension. Nothing has changed in the format and the way that we're rolling this out, which everybody has been a part of in the past. So phase one, research, and we're doing all of the mapping stuff, but if you actually look at, we are giving a updated draft. We're looking at finishing our draft with updated tables and charts in July and August. So we're calling it the mapping updates that need to be complete in August. If not, they will continue to roll through based on the state's recommendation into our next draft. Where it comes into play next is at the very top line on here. This is now internal review phase. So the Planning Commission and the city staff will get the first stab at the document. So they will begin at the end of August, going through the document, redlining it, giving recommendations, seeing if we need to hold more meetings or obtain more information or update data. Once they give us the comments back, we will then be crafting update draft number 2. This draft is important because then we're releasing it internally again. And by internally, I mean to the Board of Commissioners and all the city committees. This will now give you a better draft than what the Planning Commission saw with their comments, goals, and information in it for the Board of Commissioners and the city committee to go ahead and review it and have time to produce changes. After those changes in beginning of December take place and potentially a special meeting, we may have another special meeting to discuss any conflicting comments. For example, if there's something the Board of Commissioners doesn't feel meets the alignment of their goals versus the Planning Commission and their goals, we'd like to be able to meet in December to talk through some of those and make sure that we're all on the same page. The document is in a better final plan stage to release to the public, the county, the state, the municipalities. So once again, phase 2, we're calling an internal review so we can get our document in a much better state before we release it to the public and the agencies. Now in phase 3, this is probably the most critical. This is when we want input from the communities and the organizations. So in the beginning of January, because it is very difficult to release your document in November, December due to government holidays, we'd like to release the draft plan. In that, we would do a presentation of highlights, lowlights, areas of need, what the process was. We would release that for the community, all the organizations. There's several organizations that took part in our interviews, so we'll release it to all of those. And then we also have to release it to the county, to Dewey Beach and Henlopen Acres for input. We then submit it to the state because the state will determine certification of the document. When that gets released in January, everyone will have until March. So we're asking for advance comments as much as possible in writing from the public, as we've stated, from the organizations and from the neighboring communities to provide us comments in advance so we can catalog those and create a deliverable spreadsheet for the Board of Commissioners of Planning Commission to review with our recommendations. By law, we still have to hold a public hearing. So while we're waiting for those advance comments, we can catalog those and have a special meeting to discuss some of them as they come in. In May, we will hold the legal joint public hearing where people can stand up and speak and go over their comments and recommendations. However, we're encouraging them to provide them in writing so we can properly address them and make sure they're considered. So if you look, the public will then have from January legally until the end of April to make comments on the documents. We will then take all the comments and recommendations from a special meeting with the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners, and then create our additional draft. So at this point, draft number 4 then goes to the state. So the state can be reassured that we've sent it to everybody, everybody was heard, everybody was considered, we've made the appropriate changes, which we love feedback. And then we submit it to state, and they have 20 public working days to review the document to make sure we all the state requirements for certification. We will then get comments back, and we will then have a joint meeting on the state comments to see if anything has significant impact on the plan. It's very rare that you'll have surprises or significant impact comments at this stage because we've already gone through the initial comments and have had a heads up and a nice recommendation list for us to include ahead of time in January. Once it goes through the beginning or the end of June is when we get the comments, that we'd then be looking for an adoption. We have the end of June and the beginning of July. As stated earlier in our schedule, we have till the end of July to adopt the document. It's then contingent upon the governor's certification, and then we wait for the governor to certify the plan. But it is actually legal upon adoption, upon the adoption date via ordinance. So if you see, just in case we have any surprises from the state or some intense public comments, we have a little bit of time in there that we built in to make sure we could have this year extension. So when you back everything up, every phase is about a 3-month process. We did not disrupt our original schedule. This is the same document that you've seen several times in a scope. We did add a couple of meetings based on the Planning Commission Chair's recommendation and the mayor's to make sure we go over the comments and to make sure the community, the public, and the organizations are heard and considered in the document. Based on the lack of complete outreach because of COVID with our workshop cancellations. So the next update that I'm providing is July 9th. I've been asked to attend the Planning Commission meeting and give them quantified numbers on the mapping. How much have we gotten done on the mapping? Are we still on target? Are we still on time? I can tell you that there's a reassurance on the part of the Planning Commission, myself, the mayor, the attorney, the city manager, because we were told this is the last extension. We were told this must be done. So we all have deadlines to meet. We all have quantifiers, and those phases are very difficult to adjust at this time because we did promote that schedule to the state and we're approved for that schedule. But we can have an array of meetings in between those timelines. I know this is a lot to go over today, and I know you haven't heard from me in a long, long time as I work directly with the Planning Commission. But at this point, I'll turn it back to the mayor for questions. And we're dedicated to meet this new process, and very happy that the state endorsed it, and very happy that we've had with the Planning Commission Chair, the mayor, the attorney, and the city manager throughout the project on a monthly basis.
Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate that. And I want to remind everybody that at the beginning of her presentation, Debbie indicated that this is the second presentation she's made. The first presentation was made directly to the Planning Commission about a week ago. Debbie, do you recall any, before we go to the questions from the commissioners, do you recall any significant questions from the planning commission members that might be worth passing on?
Yes, I think one of them was, we've talked about schedule, we've talked about timelines. One was, when did we find this out? We talked about late fall, early December. Records, staffing, ability from the state, county to local was difficult. So I think it was why did it happen? When did it happen? And what's our game plan? And the feeling that knowing there's an educational component I explained, the comprehensive plan does not identify zoning changes. Literally, it doesn't say we want a mixed use business district and we want it to be in this 5-block radius. That outreach, what it would say is, like a goal or recommendation typically would say a feasibility study and or further information and outreach needs to be conducted within the city to determine the area for a future mixed use business district. That is a one-off project. And by one-off, I mean it's implementation of its own. Parking implementation of its own. We've identified the issues. We've identified, identified goals. But as far as specific numbers, what's going to take place that's further defined, that happens in your implementation categories. Some things get done in year 1, year 2, year 5, year 10. It depends on the priorities of the Board of Commissioners. So list it out and then you determine priorities of those on an annual basis through the budget process. So that there's an educational component on, is this a zoning design standards manual or is this a guide document by law, which is what the state has us do for the land use determinations. And then just the concern of, are we going to get the project done or not? Because there's been a lot of quiet time. However, we've saved the budget by not presenting every single month. We've taken the time to do research, and I can't tell you how much we talked about the county and the state actually helping the city, because if not, the city would have to figure out this stuff on their own and figure out what the problems are, where the discrepancies are. And the county's offering to do a lot of that legwork in their GIS and Recorder of Deeds department. So we're happy that they respect Rehoboth and want to work with Rehoboth. That was a great relationship. But other than that, we weren't changing people's values or properties or lines or zoning of anything that wasn't recorded properly. So that was probably the top concerns.
Thank you, Debbie. Before we get to commissioner questions, I wanted to address our city solicitor with 2 questions. Glenn, one, do you recall any legal questions coming out of the Planning Commission after viewing Debbie's presentation?
I don't recall legal questions. I mean, there's certainly a question, what is going to happen when a person maybe discovers that our records are different than the Sussex County records, and those are matters that will be worked out on an individual basis. The land records are going to, reveal one thing or the other, and we hope to get as many of those worked out as we can before the maps are actually published. But that's the real basis of the legal question that's going to arise.
Very good. Thank you, Glenn. That answered both my questions. We'll go to Commissioner Gay. You're muted.
Thanks, Debbie, for that update. And I also watched it last Friday. And of course, as you know, I've been been around this plan from the beginning, and certainly I've seen it go through a lot. And the pandemic didn't help. And I understand that in many ways your hands are tied, our hands are tied, because we can only get so many extensions from the state. However, as much as I am very glad to know that the public comment period is a full 60 days, that's important. I think the particular 60 days of January to March are probably the single worst time of the year that we can expect to get feedback from most property owners. They're just not here. And even the people who live here aren't necessarily here. I mean, it's just it's the time of year when, for lack of a better, I don't know that anybody's really even paying attention. I don't know what to do about that at this point. I really don't know what to do, because I understand we have a schedule to meet. The only thing I would say that further in your comments about the process that goes after March is that you mentioned, these meetings in April and these final drafts. And you said, when we get to that point, there are no surprises. because everything's been done. Well, I guess I would say to you, you can expect some surprises. Because if people, and I don't, you know, that's just my speculation, mind you, but I feel like if we don't have a good enough public input in the January to March timeframe, we're going to get it. We're just going to get it later.
Commissioner Gay, that's a great comment. And I truly understand, because when we started this project, we said we wouldn't do anything in the winter months for specific reasons. Unfortunately, we decided to try to ask for the year to not really hurry up the Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners and then do it the October, November, December, when everybody's on holiday. But I do think what we're faced with now is really doing a high level marketing and outreach, as many resources as we can to promote that we're asking for everybody to do input and take the time to review. So for example, before, when we had people send the outreach material for the workshops to the organizations like the Homeowners Association, to SOLA, those organizations really stepped up, and Main Street went out and gave out the information. So I think we really need to step up our campaign, our outreach, and our notice to let everybody know we need your help in these 90 days. The concern that I would have is when we submit that second document to the state, between that fourth draft to the state and we send after the adoption, after the full adoption. So that second read, we don't anticipate large amount of comments, because we do have to get it to the state. However, because we've given everybody the 90 days, I agree, May's not going to help out at all anyways. It's one more month later. But we're really going to try to get advanced comments as much as possible, because that's going to help. And then people will see that second draft. And if we have comments between the two, we'll have to address them. But content-wise, I don't envision a lot of content on the second round. I'm hoping, and really, being probably as much assertive as we can in proactiveness, to try to really promote those upfront comments, because then they will be considered, they are inclusive. If we're to the last hour with the state, sometimes you're going to have to get in a situation to say, we got to look at that next time, and we don't want to be there. We really want to try to get it in this project. I do anticipate that, but I do think the off-season comments, we're going to have to really step it up. And that includes the Board of Commissioners and Planning Commission to really market the document, go out and knock on the door in social media. And we really have to get public input at that level. So thank you. I agree with you on the timing.
Well, and I appreciate that the additional outreach and the need for it and the help with that, because I think it'll be absolutely critical this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Something going on?
Mayor, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
There we go, Commissioner Byrne.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, we had lost audible for a moment. Debbie, thanks for the thorough report and all of the detail. I'm very curious. Have other municipalities across the state or in the coastal region bumped against this large number of mapping discrepancies? Is this common, or is this unique to Rehoboth Beach?
Oh, so I'll be honest, this is the first time in my 20 years that I've had a municipality do their own mapping layers and maintain those outside of the county. However, I do understand in the past why the city has done it, because you're also one of the few municipalities that does their own assessing. So if you're keeping records in a different format and keeping up with them and maintaining them, that's a full-time position that you have to articulate, and you have to continually communicate with the county. And I do think probably maybe some priorities have switched, but I have highly recommended, and I think our entire team is aware of this, highly recommended that you use the county data for all parcel information. It has to be recorded by law and stamped, and it's a legal term. However, you do have to check the data because there are errors. There's errors between sometimes when attorneys write up legal descriptions to the survey themselves, to the meets and bounds, and then they get mapped that way. So in my career, I would recommend that the city move forward with working with the county mapping information. And I think they are moving forward in that. And then if they want to keep their own layer for internal purposes of non-legal documentation or history of land, I think that's a good idea. But I have not ran into this situation. I've run into municipal boundaries being incorrect in almost all jurisdictions. But since the city has not grown in annexation wise in several years, you haven't been subject to that.
Right. Thanks, Debbie. Quick follow-up. Are we unusual in being given this amount of extension that we've been given, or is this happening across the state?
I can, as far as comprehensive plans, almost all the municipalities are done because it was a 2008 to 10 era. But the majority of them were getting 1 and 2 extensions. And everybody was getting 1 because this was an unfunded mandate by the state. These updates must be done, but there's no funding. So towns like, like Rehoboth Beach or the cities, were doing multiple budget years to pay for it. We were doing it in 2 and 3 years to spread out the budget. However, when COVID hit, all of a sudden the extension box got turned on. All of a sudden, because you cannot reach the public. You cannot communicate with the public in a workshop setting or a charrette or stickers on a board and get their input one-on-one. For the community and organizations that don't like to speak publicly, they're not speaking at all. For the ones that want to remain active and vocal, they're attending the meetings virtually. But for a person that's on the street that just wants to talk one-on-one about what they like and don't like, you're not hitting that population. So COVID put a halt. Several people went for a second extension. I can tell you this is the first time in my career we've gone for a third, but it was a really good reason. And they were very good and understanding and want to work out the problem before we release the document.
Sure.
Would have been to release the document and you would have inherited the nightmare. So we're trying to work on it ahead of time.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Commissioner Srnowski?
Thank you. Debbie, why, 10 years ago or 11 years ago now, when the last CDP was done, why did the mapping issue not come up then?
So this is an assumption. I did not work for the city, but my assumption is in 2015, the state came up with new requirements to make it parcel-based mapping.
Okay.
Since then, the first map has taken, and now they have available information. We have layers for environmental protection, parcel information, land use. So now the information is available and it's free by the state and it's parcel based. So when you're making a decision, it's not a block of land, it's now a piece of property to ensure you don't have spot zoning or spot land uses. So I do believe the 2015 efforts of the and the new requirements for the comprehensive plan triggered it to be parcel based versus shading with the color crayon that everybody did 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So new requirements, and then the analysis we did. The analysis wasn't in our scope. We actually just wanted to make sure and QAQC it, and we found them, and the city stood right up and said, let's get it right.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the update, Debbie. Much appreciated. You referred back to the high-level outreach for comments. Whose responsibility is to put that program together and manage it and take the results and analyze them?
So we actually take, and by outreach, I don't.
This week marked the anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. Here to explain his side of the story.
Pause a minute. Take a 1 minute pause. Audio technical difficulty.
Would you like me to continue unless we get broke into again?
Yeah, Glenn had to leave, so yeah, we'll go ahead and continue.
Unfortunately, the
sorry.
clip was the sinking of the Titanic. Well, I don't feel that way, just so you know. Really, really good comment. And I would say that the public outreach, we work very closely with the information officer in the city. We have a new public information officer, but they have a great list. And we designed an outreach program that we were working on input originally. So ideally, KCI would develop this outreach plan, and it would mimic the very beginning of this when we asked for input from the organizations and the workshops ahead of time. At that point, the city would administer it. We would send out notifications. We would ask that they do press releases. We'd look at any kind of tax bills going out in the time frame or utility bills, anything we could possibly catch. But one of the most effective tools we used in the outreach was sending it to the organization leaders, as I said earlier, because their outreach, their group, small group of people that have email contacts is very individualized and managed quite well. And the city also has a notification release that hits thousands of people. So that outreach, I mean, is just to tell people, we have a release of the document. We want your input. We apologize. It's 90 days. That's still a good public hearing timeframe, but we want your input. As far as the results coming in, KCI will manage those. We will be having an email address on the city's website that will be masked. Those emails will be coming directly to KCI. We will then be cataloging all comments verbatim into a spreadsheet, and they will be verbatim. It will not divulge where the resource comes from. They can get the city board of commissioners, everybody can get that from the city staff, but we honestly don't care where it comes from. We care about the content. We want to make sure everybody's heard on the same level. The third column is then a recommendation from KCI. So we pre-screen all of them, but show you all of them. By pre-screen, I mean, we can fix this on page 5, great recommendation. We think spell check, thank you very much. We spelled something wrong. Unfortunately, that happened. And then we're gonna have some items that say we need further discussion with the Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners. Those are the items that we are gonna actually evaluate and bring back to you to say, okay, here's ones that we might think might be an area that we want further discussion on. It's not just a correction of or an update of things that would be a land use factor or a higher level input that would be needed. So you'll have a nice deliverable on that. We've used that during COVID because it's very hard to have people's public comments in a virtual setting for a long period of time on a large document that's going to give you a 5 to 10 year plan. So I think you'll like that deliverable, and I think it's very precise. You might not like what everybody has to say, but it is all in there. And then we can review all of them. So that's the quantification you'll get from that public input. But as far as the campaign, we're going to use all and any resources we can as much as possible in getting the word out the end of November through the whole month of December to give everybody a heads up.
Anything else, Commissioner Gossett? All right, thank you. Commissioner Gay, please.
Yeah, I had actually one clarification and one additional question. The clarification is you mentioned 90 days, but on the calendar, the public comment process starts in January and they're due by March 4. That's 60 days.
Well, the actual public hearing by law is May, I believe, on there.
Okay, so you're leaving the comment
people
period
off.
basically open that whole time.
Yes.
Okay.
We can't cut people off by law. They have a right to come to the meeting, but we're hoping we address as much as we can for that meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then the other question was, you had said at the beginning, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, that the pandemic took away our opportunity for direct interactions with people, and we had to rely on other means. And I understand, there'll be a big outreach, but I'm wondering if somewhere in here there is an opportunity for face-to-face workshops or charrettes or the kinds of things that have been done in the past where the interaction with people is so critical.
We have lost that opportunity with this third extension and with the COVID measures. Because so basically what we're doing is we have to have a point where our initial outreach gets cut off so we can start documenting what we've pulled in. The public hearing document, unfortunately, we're not able to do all the proactive workshops in the schedule that we have. Right now, our focus is that mapping, and that's what we promised the state. The second focus is, if I was to do workshops, I would have to cut the Board of Commissioners time in the review to probably under a week, and the Planning Commission's time review in under a week. And I think that's where we have to rely on the local knowledge, the local involvement from the leadership and the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners to give us everything they can. But I also know that we do not get a lot of public input on specific things. I think we'll have more in Rehoboth, but specific things. Where do we want our land use to go? And a lot of people don't understand land use. In Rehoboth, they do. I'm not sure what comments we will and when they will have to be addressed prior to that May submittal to that May final submittal to the state or June. But as far as the outreach portion, I don't know where we would get this in unless the Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners gets a week in December to turn it around. Because we'd have to promote that, set it up, obtain the data, analyze the data, turn it into our document. And that's really what we were set up to do with those workshops almost a year ago, a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So, with us focusing on the mapping over the summer and being restricted still with COVID meetings, I think that's going to be difficult to do on our schedule. And it's missed because that's where I actually get the most, I'm not going to say thrill, but I really, really enjoy those settings. And the Planning Commission was really, really excited to do that one-on-one. And I think the public was too.
They're absolutely. I mean, they're the most critical part of the process. So I
Yep.
mean, we obviously have to work with it, but it's gonna.
And they will have. Like I said, we tried to extend that. I think it's also easier for people to give comment on a document and redline it what they don't like. Some people feel really, really good about, we don't want this in here, we do want this in here, than to discuss it and for us to reiterate what we thought they said.
Thanks.
Yep.
That's fine.
Thank you. If there's no more comments or questions from the commissioners, then we're going to turn to the public, specifically to talk about this presentation and the CDP. First person, Carol Everhart, Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce. Do you have anything on this topic, Carol?
No, no comment at this time.
Thank you, Carol. Suzanne Good?
The only point I want to make, but this is just based on hearing most of the discussion, is in light of an increasing percentage of the houses being occupied year-round, either by residents before COVID or second homeowners who've now chosen to live here year-round during COVID, I'm not sure the January to March timeframe poses such a problem. So I think we might want to not worry about that too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Dan or Greer?
No comment at this time, Mayor.
Thank you, Dan. Walter Brittingham? Is he on?
Nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Sally Foreman? Sally, you there? You might be muted if you're talking.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Sally. Anything on the CDP?
The video is not in sync with the phone with the phone feed, and it's the phone feed's way ahead of what you see on the screen, but I guess you know that.
Yes, we do.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Debbie. I also watched your presentation when you made it before the Planning Commission. And I don't think it's a secret to anyone, Save Our Lakes Alliance was the responsible organization for having the state claim its ownership of Lake Comegys and Silver Lake. And certainly the ownership and boundaries of lakefront properties is an important part of the development plan that has to be done for any natural resource. And we consider these lakes really treasured lakes for our community. And we have actually done a lot of research on different parts of lakes problems. And one of that also includes data that we have on ownership. And we understand that claims have been made about ownership of property owners beyond the shore, the existing shoreline. And we also have, understanding of what DNREC regulations are for that. And we've been involved in some of those controversies in terms of people claiming that they owned into the lakes beyond what they did and or what they do, and were able to build a property that was actually not correct in terms of the boundaries according to prior deed searches. But anyway, I think that exists around the lake in a number of cases. The question I have, and I'm not sure you can answer this, Debbie, is that I would really like to know the resources that the county and the city has used to determine these discrepancies. For instance, did they do title searches? Did they look at deeds? Did they do surveys? Because some of this has been done before, and I think, you know, a lot of it has to be updated, but it would be very helpful for us to know what was done and who had actually participated in that.
So, do you want me to address that, Mayor Mills?
Yes, please.
So just thank you very much, and thank you for your input on the comprehensive plan as solo organization. It was vital to our environmental section. As far as the data analysis, it simply is pulling a GIS mapping layer from the county and a GIS mapping layer from the city and comparing the polygons. It's that easy. But the backup to that, you're correct. We just took 2 data sets and compared them and said, red flag, somebody's got to do something. The county's GIS data layer is obtained from documents that are legally adopted, certified, stamped to the best of their knowledge. So when you have a deed that goes in or legal description, it gets stamped at Recorder of Deeds, it goes to mapping, and they make changes. And sometimes there's a delay in that process. They've gotten really good at it. They've got a new department division. So they make changes and they host and own that service, and decisions are made by municipalities and state government and county government based on that data. So there could be some discrepancies on what was submitted to be approved, what was then mapped. And the same thing with the city. The city may have something that was mapped that went through the county that didn't go through the city. So we, KCI, did not go through the legal metes and bounds and descriptions. The city pulled the records on these of what they had. And there's so many different departments. We pulled records and assessments and several other things, and we provided those to the county. The county's pulling their records, so then we can bring it back legally to say, which one of these do we think is right? When it comes to the lake projects, when we heard that somebody else was contracted to do this information, we just gave them the 2 map sets and forwarded that to them with our spreadsheet. So if you have valuable data for the project, I am sure the city and the Army Corps of Engineers would be more than happy to share or get that information. So I know that that project's being worked on, I believe, by Evan Miller and Kevin Williams in the city, as far as project leads or project managers. And I think if you had any information for the Army Corps of Engineers, just like we did, we shared it with them. We will then be taking their data information once it's legal and revised and updated at the county and using it in the comp plan. So we're just going to be the middleman in that. So if you have any valuable information and all that's been done, I am sure that the city and everybody would appreciate that valuable record keeping.
Well, actually, you know, we do, as I said earlier, we consider ourselves a major stakeholder, and we have offered and presented to the city with Evan as the lead a lot of information we have. Unfortunately, the scope of work was developed without any input from us. And secondly, as they're moving forward, for instance, in this case, we have not been included. No one has asked us about any of the data we might have, which I have said we do have before. So that's why I thought maybe it was through another area that wasn't Evan and the Corps and the other 2 municipalities, well, the Sussex County and Dewey. So yeah, I will contact them, but it's important for us to be part of that, and I hope everyone agrees with that.
Thank you, Sally. Appreciate it. Thank you, Debbie. There's no more questions or comments. I would like to thank, in particular, city staff. You know, this is like an iceberg. What you've seen is the tip of the iceberg. Our city staff has worked on the bottom of the iceberg. Many hours. Max Hamby from the IT department, and Womack, Don Moore, and of course, Glenn and Sharon, also Debbie. I wanted to thank you, Debbie, because you've been our liaison to the county. And again, a lot of effort's gone into this, a lot of thought, and we appreciate that. With that, Debbie, we're going to let you go off to your wedding. Have a good time. And we thank you.
Just for clarification, it's not my wedding. I'm just a guest. So,
a wedding.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Debbie.
Aye.
With that, for those that weren't on at the beginning of the meeting, I indicated 2 items would be done out of order, and that is the CDP presentation we just did, so that Debbie could get on her way. The other item I mentioned was the discussion of HB 146. So we'll entertain that next, which is a discussion of House Bill number 146, impacting municipal elections by proposing to integrate local and state voter registration. Glenn, do you have that in front of you? You could read the synopsis.
Sure, Mayor. So the synopsis of this bill says, of the 57 municipalities in the state, the following 12 municipalities currently have an agreement with the Department of Elections to use the state's voter registration system to determine if a resident of the municipality is eligible to vote in a municipal election. Camden, Delaware City, Dover, Ellesmere, Georgetown, Harrington, Newcastle, Newark, Smyrna, Townsend, Wilmington, and Wyoming. The residents of the 45 other municipalities are required to register with the municipality before voting in a municipal election. While some municipalities are exploring ending municipal voter registration requirements, this act would do so for all municipalities as it relates to resident voters. A municipality would continue to be required to maintain municipal voter registration requirements for non-resident voters, as those voters would not be included in the state's voter registration system. This act also makes technical corrections to conform existing law to the standards of the Delaware Legislative Drafting Manual.
I'm sure many would agree that the objective of this, to make it easier, to facilitate voter registration is a laudable goal. But for us, it's the mechanics of how this would be applied that are perhaps of concern and desiring additional discussion today. If you recall at the last meeting where this was introduced for the first time, I suggested that our election official, Donna Moore, meet with Glenn Mandalis and Sharon to go over the mechanics of how this would be applied and how it might impact, for better or worse, the city of Rehoboth Beach. And they have done that, and I've asked Donna Moore, our #1 election official, to be here today and to tag team with Glenn Mandalis. I suggest that we take notes, that we make note of any questions to ask of our legislators, as well as any comments, and then do a follow-up within after this meeting, and we get your comments. So should we start off with Donna Moore? If you would maybe introduce some concerns or something, and then again, Glenn, if you would help tag team with Donna so that we can understand what some of the pros and cons are perhaps of this statement.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the first concern is the 911, not 19971 corridor. It includes Route 1, Dewey Beach, in town. It's going to include the whole mapping area. My understanding is that we get a list from the Department of Voter Registrations in Georgetown, and it's going to include all of 19971. It's going to be like it's a timeline. You're going to have it the first 6 weeks. They're going to give us a list. We have to read through it, go through everything, send it back to them. They'll go over the list, they'll correct it, send it back to us. I think it was like 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks, we do the same thing. And then they do the same thing a week prior to the election. And then the 2 business days prior to the election, we get the final list. We have to submit it to them, they'll send it back to us. We'll receive that on a Friday by noon prior to the election. My concern also is...
Don, before we move on to that one, so the practical difficulty of that, I think, is that it'll be difficult for candidates to get real-time voter registration lists while they're campaigning. I'm sorry. Go ahead then. You're doing great.
That was my next concern with the voter, with the candidates. But throughout the campaigns, we're contacted wanting updated lists of voter registration. We will not get the correct list until the Friday before the election. So, we know that's one of our concerns on that.
Yeah.
Another concern is the way the charter is written about trust voting, corporations, LLCs.
Yeah, so that one, I mean, the concern there is that, you know, in this bill, at line 16, it says, if a municipality permits voting by non-residents, the municipality shall maintain the municipality's own voter registration system as a source of municipalities' list for registered non-resident voters. I guess that was a separate concern. That's the only treatment it gives non-residents, but as to Donna's concern, we don't know how the state voter registration system is going to capture, you know, the limitations that the city has put on, or the voting criteria that it's established, that you can vote under certain trust agreements, but you certainly cannot vote as a corporation or an LLC, and we don't know how that gets worked into the system if we're under the state's voter registration system. It may be workable. We just don't know at this point whether it is.
Yeah. What we're going to have to do is compare the tax list with the voter registration that the state supplies.
So that'll be all part of the whittling down during the 6-week period prior. So, I mean, I think that Donna and I have talked about it, and Donna agrees that the concept is good because the approach is to try to make voter registration and eligibility to vote streamlined and easier. And certainly we think that it would work well for a city that doesn't have sort of the transient nature that we have, and a lot of non-resident voters and people having homes here as a second home. It would make, you know, it creates, I think, some difficulties for beach communities, coastal communities, that a lot of the other municipalities in the state don't have. So those are just some practical concerns that Don and I have identified.
And they're keeping the two separate voter lists, so I think that's a concern.
That's true. I mean, Donna and her team will have to maintain a separate non-resident voter registration system, which will be a separate set registration list, aside from whatever gets developed through the state system. So that's another practical result of this legislation.
Glenn, at our first meeting where this was introduced, you also indicated a pause or concern about the definition of residence and domicile. Is that rise to the level that we should talk about that or point that out to our legislators?
I think it has been pointed out. I've seen some emails, and they haven't made any changes to it yet. My concern is that, you know, we make clear within our charter at Section 7 that to vote in a City of Rehoboth Beach election as a resident, Rehoboth Beach has to be your domicile. That is your main dwelling, the place you expect to return to. People can have multiple residents. So you can be a resident of Wilmington, Delaware, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and Chevy Chase, Maryland, but you can only have one domicile. I'd much rather this legislation use the word domicile instead of resident throughout. But I think that because our charter clarifies what is a resident in the City of Rehoboth Beach, I think the two pieces, the charter and this legislation, work together well to describe a resident as somebody who's domiciled here. So I don't think it's something that's fatal to the legislation. It's just one of those things that I think it could be tweaked a little bit better to use the word domicile.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, Donna or Glenn? We thank you very much. We'll open it up to questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Byrne.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. You know, I brought this up some weeks ago because the concept driving this, the principles behind this seem to be all of the right ones. How do we best streamline voter registration? How do we get the maximum number of people to turn out to vote, to make it easy for them to vote, and so on and so forth? So we do agree with that. I do agree with the concerns that Donna and Glenn and the mayor have pointed out. I think these are the practical mechanics of this. And I think it's key that through the city manager's office or some way, these concerns get communicated to our local legislators kind of ASAP, because it's my understanding that there's a good possibility of this legislation, which is now out of committee, being released for floor debate and vote by possibly the middle of June. And that would be the likely time. That's right around the corner. There is time for the legislature to go back and work on some of this if they hear the concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would plan to expedite this, Glenn, work together, and we'll get something out. If we want to share it with the commissioners, we can do that too. That would be fine. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Calusi?
Yes. So would you say one of the main concerns is that you're going to have to maintain separate voter lists and try to call out the names? Is that where one of your main concerns?
Yeah, I think so. It's going to be an extra added effort every election season. One thing you can say about Donna is meticulous with her registration system, and she doesn't have to redo it every year because she's continually, throughout the year taking registrations and making sure it's up to date. This process is going to require her and Jean every year to look at the list that she's given and then name by name figure out is this person.
Well, right, and that's my question. Have you talked to IT, to perhaps Max Hamby or some of the people in IT, to find out whether there's a way that they could call the data in an automated fashion that may make it simpler?
No, I haven't. And Max is sitting here and hearing this for the first time, and I'm sure he's saying one more thing for me to figure out. But we have not, and that's a conversation we'll have. It's a good suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, first of all, what's the likely effective date? I mean, is it likely to go through the assembly and be signed by the governor this year in this session?
It could be this session. It says the act takes effect immediately and is to be implemented for municipal elections held on or after January 1, 2022.
Oh, okay. So it wouldn't affect this year anyway for us. Okay.
That's next year.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I get it. That's good. I mean, I don't know if that gives us any time to deal with, lists that might exist at the state level this year, almost do like a dry run or not. But a couple of questions. First of all, I guess, Glenn, I'm not really understanding the comment you made when you referred to the line in the legislation about, non-resident voting and the fact that we have categories that, depending on what kind of trust you're in or LLC or whatever, because if they're a resident, it doesn't matter what category they're in, right? So why would our categories of non-residents that don't qualify enter into this particular mix?
I guess you raise a good question. So in the freeholder status that we have, that's where the trust voting comes into place. But the freeholder owner isn't on it would be on our non-resident voter list. Yeah, you bring up a good point, and it may not be as big a deal as I think it could be. We just need to think through each of those different enumerations of how our current voting is laid out to ensure that this doesn't somehow, when we went through the last round of election charter changes, it was very, very critical to members of the public and to the commissioners that there wasn't some way for entity voting to come into play. And I just see these things as all kind of intermingled, and I want to be sure that this legislation doesn't somehow allow for that to creep into our election process. But I think you're right. On the trust voting, I think you're right. The trust voting is really something that would be under our non-resident voting.
Well, so would entity voting. So would entity voting. In other words, if somebody happens to have their house in an entity, but they live here, they're a resident. So it doesn't matter how, none of that matters. What matters are keeping the rules for our non-residents, which we're going to do and can do, right, with this legislation. So it doesn't change the
right.
rules for non-resident. It just makes anybody who's a resident automatic.
I agree with that. I just get concerned because, again, a resident can be a resident in multiple places, and the fact that, it's just at some point, if the state considers an LLC to be a person, and then that, then there's a property owned here by an LLC, are they now a resident through that LLC? And
well, in that case, the domicile then is critical. And did I just hear you say you think we're covered there because of the way we define it in our charter?
I think so. I think that if we look to our charter for the definition of resident, because the state code under the election section does not define resident.
Right.
So I think that the default would go to our charter's definition.
Okay. And then my last question is in terms of the currency of the list, and maybe this is a question for Donna. So say day one or this year, you get the final vetted list. Do you use that as the current list? In other words, what if somebody registered as a resident 10 years ago and they happen to still be on our rolls and you never heard they left or whatever? Then would they still be on if there's a discrepancy? I guess what I'm asking is if there's a discrepancy between the list you get from the state and the list you may already have, which prevails?
My understanding is the state does.
Yeah, the state, the idea is that the city is probably supposed to stop keeping a list of resident voters because the state list is supposed to be the default. The state uses a very similar purging process to what the commissioners implemented last time we did a charter change. So it's the same idea where if somebody does not vote in 2 consecutive elections, the state sends a letter saying you haven't voted, we're going to put you on an inactive status. If you come in for the next election and vote, then you're automatically put back on an active status. If you don't come in and vote, then are you taken off the list at that point? Whatever our charter is, it's the same thing that the state uses. So I don't have any concern about that.
That's good. And so the list, you'll be getting the list every year. It's not right. Every year there'll be an updated list from the state.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I see that there are a lot of challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gossett?
Wrong button there, sorry. In registering to obtain your voter registration in the state of Delaware, what materials do you have to present in order to become a registered voter in Delaware? You know?
Good question, and I don't know because other than we do have motor voter ID. So if you're registering your car in the state, that's good enough. But I don't know if you're not registering your automobile here, what is the prerequisite proffers to obtain voter registration. I can try to find that while we're talking.
And sort of a follow-up on that with regards, I noticed one of our neighboring municipalities recently updated their charter to change the phrase from residence to domicile. How does one establish a domicile here? Because you mentioned earlier, you can only have one domicile, but you can have multiple residents. Is there a certified form, or just what role does one have to establish domicile?
It's different for different places. When we last updated our charter, I took language from a Delaware case that basically defines domicile, and I can bring our charter up and tell you what we use. I can find it. But it's basically the place that you intend to vote, the place you intend to call home and return to when you're away. But a resident is really just, having a place to sleep. You can be a resident of any multiple places.
I think the IRS has a lot to say about it as well.
Right.
So there is really no honest definition, or I mean, there's no way to really have someone declare. The only reason I'm asking along the lines, because other states, Florida for one, you have to sign an affidavit declaring your domicile in Florida, and meaning you have to live there more than 6 months and 1 day to determine that as your domicile. And as you register to vote or register your automobile or what have you, that is part of the registration process. So it can be established, I guess, state to state, or I don't comes down to granular municipalities or not. But I know that type of credentialing, if you will, is in effect in other states.
Commissioner, I
So
think
under our charter, I'm
I
sorry.
was just going to say, I think that's the IRS definition, the 6 months and 1 day, where you pay your taxes, where you file and pay your taxes.
Right, our charter says, as used herein, domicile shall mean the place where a person has their true, fixed, permanent home and principal establishment, and to which, whenever the person is absent, the person has the intention of returning. So I don't remember what case that was taken from. I think I cited it when we did the support document, and I could find it, but that's the way the City of Vero Beach charter defines domicile.
Well, I think in the past we've had discussions, and frankly, something I would like to pursue, but, having that definition is one thing. It's how to validate it is a whole other thing that we've never been able to put our finger on, I think. I think we should. So I hope this starts that conversation, Patrick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commissioners or Donna or Glenn? If not, we'll go to the public. Debbie is gone. Carol Everhart, anything on this particular topic, HB 146?
No comment, Mayor.
Thank you. Suzanne Good?
I echo Mr. Mandalis's sentiments that Ms. Moore is extremely diligent. So we are blessed to have her working on behalf of all of us in City Hall. This bill obviously is administrative in nature, but as long as we're on a related topic, I hope the next step will be to limit voter eligibility to full-time residents. Because our municipality allows non-residents to vote, the entire landscape and priorities have been dominated by business interests and landlord interests. I hope that change may come to Rehoboth Beach at some point. There are, I think, only a handful of municipalities in this entire country which allow non-residents the right to vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Off topic, but noted. Thank you, Suzanne. Dan or Greer, anything on this topic? Walter Brittingham?
No, thank you.
And Sally Foreman? Sally's is off? Okay, very good. If there's no more conversation on this, Glenn, if you would work with Donna to articulate your concerns and comments, and then we'll review them and get them to the commissioners and then get them out to who's representing this? Representative Shoup and Senator Lockman. Very good. Thank you all for doing that. Now we're going to try to go back in sequence. We're going to go back to city manager's report. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, commissioners. We have one expense for municipal street aid for the month of April to Delmarva Power in the amount of $9,489.18.
Need a motion to approve the payment of $9,489.18 to Delmarva Power.
I move approval.
I have a motion by Commissioner Dick Byrne, and who seconded?
Second, I did.
Commissioner Gay seconded. All those in favor of authorizing the city manager to pay $9,489.18 to the Delmarva Power signify by saying aye and wiggle your hand, and if you would, because that's a lot easier to make a record of. Thank you very much. And that would pass unanimously. Thank you very much. Our next item is anything. You have some more?
Yeah, thank you. The city will launch its July 4th fireworks display as scheduled on Saturday, July 3, around 9:30 p.m. is when they usually launch. Festivities will begin at the bandstand at 8 p.m. that night with the Funsters performing, and the city will employ public health safety precautions as approved by the Division of Public Health, and those who are not vaccinated will be encouraged to wear a mask. This weekend, the city and the Rehoboth Art League are hosting an arts festival. More than two dozen juried artists will be exhibiting and selling their jewelry, paintings, woodworking, and mixed media creations from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's tomorrow at Grove Park. The parking season begins next Friday, May 28th. We're looking for a very good season. Parking is at meters or by permit only from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., except for meterless Mondays, which the commissioners have voted on and agreed to. Meterless Mondays is when free parking is available from 4 p.m. Until the conclusion at 10 p.m. The city installed 29 new parking pay stations in locations throughout the city. They are around Lake Gerard, on Lake Avenue, around the municipal complex, at the Grove Park parking lot, on Maryland and Olive Avenues between 3rd and 2nd Streets, the second blocks of Philadelphia and Brooklyn Avenues, and the 4th and 2nd and Christian Street. Parking permit sales to date, and that is as of yesterday, Thursday at 4 p.m., are $169,170. This, of course, this amount is more than last year at this time, and we project to be above the 2019 permit sales at this point in time. Beginning Monday, a contractor will be on the beach inspecting and repairing 2 stormwater outfalls that have been damaged by recent storms. Director of Public Works, Mr. Williams, reported on that a few meetings ago. Work is expected to continue throughout the week on making temporary repairs to the outfalls in order to make them safe for the upcoming season. After the season, permanent repairs will be made to these. And the work this week may require isolated portions of the beach be temporarily closed. The city has issued an RFP for motorized watercraft transportation and recreational services. That ad was placed in today's Gazette and will be in next week as well. This is for the Grove Park Canal Dock, and the city intends to enter into an agreement with one single qualified provider. The deadline for the proposals, when they're due, is 2 p.m. on June 3rd, at which time we will open the bids. The Wilmington Baltimore Streetscape project consultant, Rossi, is scheduled to present an update to the task force next Wednesday, May 26th at 9 a.m. Trash will be picked up on Memorial Day and as scheduled on the south side of the city. The Junction and Breakwater pathway extension is essentially complete. DelDOT is waiting to settle some property matters before officially opening it to the public. The short connector is going to be great for bikers and pedestrians, allowing them a safer transition between the trail and the city of Rehoboth Beach via Rehoboth Avenue and Grove Park.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for the city manager?
Can we have questions from the public for the city manager?
Wait a minute. Got to do it in order. Commissioners first. Thank you. Commissioner Legree?
City manager, what kind of an estimate do we have on the repairs to the outfall?
If you can just hold on a few seconds, please.
We'll get back to you, Jay. Any other comments from the commissioners? Oop.
The estimate's approximately $20,000.
Commissioner Byrne? Oh, Jay, did you want to follow up?
And that's for this initial inspection or 20,000 for the definitive repair.
Initial.
It's for everything.
No,
just
initial inspection and the immediate repairs.
Any estimates for a definitive repair?
No, not at this time, Commissioner.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Manager.
Thank you. Commissioner Byrne?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Question for the city manager. I'm just curious as to the rationale regarding the type of RFP that you've put out for a boat taxi service. And I don't know the best way to do this because it's unprecedented for us in our city. But why are we going after just one vendor as opposed to kind of a business license approach where any number of vendors, potentially could get the license if they met, specific kinds of criteria, safety criteria, et cetera.
Well, first, let me just say that the vendor for the kayaks, there are several interested parties, and we wanted to consider a fair playing field. And we don't have a lot of room there for multiple vendors to be present there and do their business there. So we thought that would be the best way. And frankly, for the water taxi service, it was determined that pretty much the same scenario is present. So we were looking for one individual vendor. We don't have a large space, as you know. The dock can accommodate just a certain amount of individuals at one time, and it would not be prudent to have more than one vendor there at one time for not only safety purposes, but for purposes that we've stated at other meetings, including the fact that there'll be multiple people, expected multiple people at any one time. So that's mainly the reason.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I'm very excited about the opportunity to have a water taxi, and I hope the vendor that we get, will be here frequently and provide a lot of different types of services. So hopefully this will serve us well, and it'll be a learning experience this season too as we go through it.
That's true, Commissioner. It's the first year we're doing this. And I will add that the fencing for the additional fencing will not be installed, at least started to be installed until June 1st.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Calusi?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It seems to me, I understand that you have one vendor for the kayaks, and that makes sense, but right as I understand it, there aren't a lot of people beating down the door to do water taxi business. It's kind of a lost leader, I believe, at this point. But the whole idea of just allowing for permits and allowing the vendors to prove that they can in fact meet the requirements seems to me to be a simpler way of doing this. I'm very disappointed that we're not trying to move towards that direction. I know it's the first year and perhaps this will work out okay, but I think it's for the first year that we're not going to have as much action there as I wish we would. And I think it's going to be disappointing for a lot of riders. So I would hope in the future that we can look at a permit system, and perhaps as we move forward, that we may be able to change it sooner than rather than later. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Stranowski?
Yeah, Mayor, this may be a moot point, but I thought when we approved the ordinance, it was stated that the water taxi would be a permit situation, or it would be a business permit rather than going to RFP. I thought that's what we approved. I don't have a strong opinion either way. That's just what I thought we approved.
Well, that's true, and Mr. Miller can add to that.
Yeah, that's correct, Commissioner. So I've actually been working with Liz on drafting change for Chapter 195, the Parks Rules and Regulations, to address that, removing the reference to a business license for the water taxi service, and also we're also revisiting the park definition because it was requested by the commissioners that we look at the Lewis Rehoboth Canal Bank and add that within the definition of the park. So I've actually been in contact with the Corps, going back and forth about whether or not we can sort of define that area as a park, and if we can, if a lease is required, and if so, to go ahead and facilitate that. So more to come on that. We have a draft currently, so it'll be presented at a future.
All right, well, thanks for the explanation.
Yep.
Thank you very much. If there's no more, I will go to Walter. You have a quick question. I'm not intending to spend a lot of time on the city manager's report.
Well, the problem is, yeah, we'll make it quick because there's no other place to ask it. So we had at the last or one or two meetings past a discussion about the variable message board as a result of the state withdrawing theirs. And I think maybe we might have gotten some new ones from somebody. Maybe the city manager can give us an update and as to what's happening or has happened, how many we got, what features they are, so the public will know, because the city manager's report on the daily basis coming out of the public relations department tells us nothing, and the city manager's report is very void of operational situations in the city. So what's happened?
Thank you, Walter. You address the message boards at all?
The city purchased 3 message boards.
There you go. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the commissioners? If not, we're going to go to the next item of business, which is city solicitor's report.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to update the commissioners on the couple Board of Adjustment lawsuits that have been proceeding. One of them involving Jack Legal Assets, and the other being filed on behalf of Mr. Langford, both in connection with commercial projects that went before the Board of Adjustment. This relates to the gross floor area discussion that the commissioners had for many, many months. All of the briefing is done in those 2 cases that have been consolidated at this point. So what's left to happen is the judge will likely schedule oral argument, and then he'll render a decision. And that could be in as little as, I shouldn't say we're certain that there's going to be oral argument, but there typically is oral argument in these sorts of cases. So we could get a decision as soon as 3 months from now, or as far out as maybe 6 months from now. But it's all the written work is done on those cases. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you very much. I see no questions. We'll go on to the next bit of business, which is departmental reports. As you see in the agenda, there's a written report embedded in the agenda from Building and Licensing Department and also the Police Department. Please consult them to see what they say. There's been no identification of any board or commission reports or committee reports. So with that, we'll go to liaison reports and either go to the liaison or they can pass it on to actual representative from the agency. Chamber of Commerce, Commissioner Gay, please.
Yes, and Carol is with us today. I think she's still here.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners.
Thank you, Carol.
I'll give you a quick update. First, job fairs, as everyone knows, I'm sure by now that workforce remains the biggest obstacle for the businesses. So we've held 2 under roof job fairs and 2 sidewalk job fairs. We have coordinated with the city and the Delaware Department of Health to also have the vaccination opportunity that's going on today promoted at the same time with the job fair. Dining guides are in process. You know, we do these every year, which is given to the visitors, and that is due in completion mid-June. The visitor center remains open on weekends. That is basically a staffing or financial problem or combination thereof, but we hope to get that open more than weekends very shortly. Boardwalk Kiosk, we have in the process of refreshing that kiosk. The chamber staff will be up there Monday through Friday. They'll be manning it Monday through Friday, 10 to 2. And through the cooperation of the VIA, it will be staffed by volunteers on Saturday and Sunday. We had a successful installation of our 2021 chamber board and the major awards to local volunteers and service folks. Tomorrow is the street market. That is at Jungle Gems. That runs from 10 to 2 tomorrow. And also interviews have been held with several major media coverage opportunities. They will be aired on Memorial Day weekend. WTOP in DC, ABC in DC, and then locally WRD and WBOC. Most of the coverage had to do with what we expect for the summer, which we reported. We expect a very high visitation summer. The other coverage asked about the jobs, vacancies, and what efforts were being done or had been done in the area to help the businesses acquire employees. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions for Carol?
Carol, I just wanted to thank you for taking on the kiosk there and having it staffed. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Carol. With that, we'll go to Commissioner Jay Legree, liaison to the Historical Society.
I'm going to get off topic just for a second. Thanks, Carol. Thanks a lot for what you folks do, keeping the kiosk on the boardwalk going. We really appreciate it. And as far as the historical, the museum's now open. Come and see it. We're going to have walking tours on the 2nd and the 16th of June. That's a 2-hour easy walking tour. Starts at the bandstand. It's $10 a person. It's being given by a very knowledgeable person, and it's a great thing. You start at 10 and have a 2-hour walk, and it's great. And lastly, for anybody that hasn't been vaccinated, for goodness sakes, they're having an event today at the city hall in the parking lot out there, and you can be vaccinated and you get a $10 gift certificate for pizza. It's great. I got vaccinated again, and I got a $10 gift certificate. No, only kidding.
Thank you, Commissioner. Liaison to Main Street, Commissioner Stronowski.
Dan Slagle is on.
Welcome, Dan.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Just wanted to get some, give you some updates from Rehoboth Main Street and some of the items we're working on. We also, as like the Chamber, we're working on a Help Wanted campaign for downtown. A lot of the businesses are looking for help. We're reaching out to them. So we're creating a campaign through our social media to get people to come downtown and apply for the jobs. So it's definitely an issue. We've also been on local media discussing job opportunities for downtown. So we are working on that with the local media. I also want to thank Cindy Lovett and her volunteers for all their hard work, the effort they put in planting over 900 flowers in downtown and making our downtown absolutely beautiful. So kudos to them and all the volunteers. We really appreciate it. Also, banners are being installed along Rehoboth Avenue. Drexel Davison from Bad Hair Day is spearheading the project. So thank you to him and his team. The banners are absolutely beautiful. I hope everyone's had a chance to take a look at them. Also, Rehoboth Main Street will be sending out our newsletter on Friday, May 28th, promoting a lot of different events that are coming up downtown, especially for Memorial Day weekend. This is another thing. I also want to thank Suzanne Good and others that have created this Rehoboth Beach map and safety tips brochure. We're actually going to put a link on our website. We think it's important to, promote safety. And I really, the map is very impressive. And a final note is I want to thank the city. I've received a lot of emails, phone calls, a lot of positive comments about having the fireworks this summer. And thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dan. Liaison to Cape Henlopen Senior Center, Commissioner Byrne.
Cape Henlopen Senior Center is open. Lots of fun classes and programs going on. Membership is only $30 a year, so I suggest people stop by, get acquainted, see all of the many opportunities that are there. Thank you.
Thank you. When's their next pancake breakfast?
Yeah, that's not scheduled yet. They're being very careful around COVID protocol, and so that has a lot to do with the service of food and so on. But hopefully before the end of summer, Stan.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. With that, we're going to go to the first item of old business, update on Wilmington, Baltimore Avenue Streetscape Design Project. I know Sharon hit on it earlier. I would just like to reiterate that on the agenda is to receive from the Rossi Group the draft streetscape schematics retaining the general roadway circulation and layout to improve pedestrian sidewalk areas, safety and circulation. And we will, after receiving those, the task force will start initial discussion to analyze the schematics. And what we'll be doing over the next meeting or two or even three after that is to target selection of one of the schematics presented and seeking further development of that. Therefore, we're going to be receiving the schematics on May 26th. And we've scheduled June 2nd and also potentially June 9th as a carryover so that we can meet our target goal as I articulated. So stay tuned. With that, we'll go to consider committee appointments. We've got 3 committees, and we'll turn them over to each committee to chair to nominate, and we can do a vote. We could do a vote as a whole slate if we wanted, or just per committee. Commissioner Byrne, you've got 2 committees. You want to start off?
Sure, thanks, Mayor. I introduced these 2 individuals at our recent workshop, Deb Ward and Terry Smith. Their applications are embedded in the agenda today, so I won't go over that detail again. They are both very interested. They both bring appropriate qualifications and availability to serve on the committee, and the committee is very much looking forward to their service. So I formally nominate Deb Ward and Terry Smith to the Animal Issues Committee. Shall I move ahead, Mayor?
Do we want to take them one at a time? We can do that if we want. Do we get a second to Commissioner Byrne's motion to nominate Deb Ward and Terry Smith to fill the 2 vacant seats on the Animal Issues Committee?
I will second that.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Byrne and a second by Commissioner Legree to appoint Deb Ward and Terry Smith to fill 2 vacant seats on the Animal Issues Committee. Is there any further discussion? If not, we'll take a vote. All those approved signify by saying aye and hold your hand up for a second.
Aye.
Aye.
So we've got a unanimous approval, and therefore they are appointed. Welcome them aboard, Commissioner, if you would. If you go on to the next item of committee appointments, that's you go ahead for the Environment Committee, please.
I'm very pleased to nominate Eric Seward to the Environmental Committee. Eric owns property in 2 different locations in town. I introduced him via his resume at the recent workshop. Again, his application is embedded in the agenda today. Eric works in the environmental field. Prior to his current profession, he was with DENREC for a number of years. So he brings some wonderful qualifications and experience and interest. And so I'm pleased to nominate Eric.
Is there I'll take that as a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion by Commissioner Byrne and a second by Commissioner Calusi to appoint Eric Seward to fill a vacant seat on the Environment Committee. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye and holding your hand up.
Aye.
Aye.
Patrick, are you an aye, or you're an aye also? So the Eric Seward is appointed unanimously. Thank you, Commissioner Byrne. With that, we'll go to the Street and Transportation Committee Chair, Commissioner Calusi.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to nominate John Dewey as a member of our committee. I talked about it at the last workshop. His applications have been embedded in the agenda, and I'll be a great addition to our committee.
Thank you. So we'll take that as a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner, we have a motion by Commissioner Calusi and a second by Commissioner Legree to appoint John Dewey to fill a vacant seat on the Street and Transportation Committee. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the appointment signify by saying aye and hold your hand up, please.
Aye.
Aye.
And that appointment is unanimous. Thank you very much, Commissioner Calusi, and welcome John aboard. With that, we're going to go to the next item of old business, and that is consider adoption of a resolution endorsing the elimination of single-use plastic straws within the city. I would like to bring your attention real quick to another state bill, Senate bill. I could not find a number on it. Dick, maybe you have it. It's an act to amend Title 7, Title 14 of the Delaware Code relating to expanded polystyrene products and single-service plastic items. Just coincidentally, I guess this has come out, and I just wanted to share it with you that the state's looking at banning the use of styrofoam. What else?
Yeah, there's a list of, if I may.
The synopsis says that limiting the use of single-service plastic items such as cocktail picks, coffee stirs, plastic straws, sandwich picks, as well as styrofoam. I don't think, Dick, that this interferes at all with your resolution, but I'd like to turn it over to you, if you would, to reintroduce your proposed resolution there.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And let me just pick up quickly where you left off. The Senate bill that you were referring to is Senate Bill 134. It was introduced to the Senate Environment and Energy Committee on May 11th, and it does just exactly what you said. It's to reduce these risks to our environment and public health by prohibiting food establishments from having those various products. And I knew that Commissioner Legree would be very excited because expanded polystyrene containers, styrofoam, is very much a part of this. I see no interference or or problem with this and what we are considering as a resolution. I think this is very exciting. However, it was just days ago that it came to the Senate Environment and Energy Committee. As far as I know, it is still there. Our General Assembly only goes through the end of June, and so whether this will have time to be thoroughly vetted, debated, et cetera, in this session, I leave that to the state politicians to figure that out, and the many, many lobbyists that are working on behalf of it. But I am really pleased, having worked with Solicitor Mandalis since our last discussion on this. Glenn has pulled this together, I think, in a very logical way. And so this resolution, just to remind everyone, and it is embedded in the agenda for those that are not familiar with it. It does call for voluntary compliance. It does indicate that that the Rehoboth Beach Mayor and Commissioners request that effective January 1, 2022, all eating establishments offer only paper straws on request, excepting for situations where a plastic straw is required. And at our last discussion, the mayor asked for a little more detail on what when required means. And it's generally defined as those individuals who have a neuromuscular disability or related disability almost always require a plastic straw. And that's why it's critically important that they be available. Now, one can argue that if one wants a straw in an ice cream drink, a malt, a shake, or a number of alcoholic drinks, that a plastic straw may be desirable. It's certainly not required, as with medical conditions. The other question that the mayor asked was a little information about the cost of plastic straws compared to biodegradable or paper straws. And there's several ways to answer that. I did talk with two of our local restaurant owners that run quite different kinds of restaurants and bars, but their answer was basically the same on cost, that 1,000 plastic straws, when you buy in bulk like that, are about $10. 1,000 paper straws are about twice that, $20. However, what the intent here is that very, very few plastic straws and very few paper straws will be used, and therefore costs may go down. The other thing that's happening out in the market is that there's a number of alternative product straws that are available at higher cost, but the cost will come down as they become more in demand and more plentiful. There are straws that range from plant-based, eco-friendly straws that, for example, are made out of canola oil. And one of the advertisements for those straws is that they will dissolve in the ocean, which is environmentally appropriate and safe, and will not dissolve in your drink. There are bamboo straws, there are steel straws, in other words, reusable straws. There are other types of plant-based straws being created, invented, tried out. There are silicone straws, and there are hay straws, H-A-Y, in other words, a plant-based hay straw. Those are selling for about $8 for 100 of them, so considerably more expensive. But again, a lot of these are being experimented with, and we're going to see the market flooded with biodegradable products more and more as we go forward. So we can continue to discuss. I'm happy to try to answer any questions that may still remain on this. Again, it's asking for voluntary compliance, and it's asking for support for members of the Environment Committee who have been working in partnership with SOLA 3 and Plastics Delaware to come up with some placards that could be voluntarily available for our eateries to have and for educational discussions with restaurant owners and managers.
Thank you, Commissioner. I believe it was Commissioner Calusi that asked about straw pricing. Pat, are you satisfied?
Yes, I'm satisfied with that. And then to look at paper versus plastic, $10 versus $20. $10 is not very meaningful to the restaurants, I believe, that spend a lot more money on a lot of other things. In fact, what I do have a comment about this, in that given that I saw within the resolution that most of the restaurants have 6 to 12 months worth of plastic straws that they, I guess, would like to use before they move to paper or some other type of biodegradable straw, that perhaps we ought to consider making it not voluntary, but mandatory. This isn't a new topic. It's been around, and I feel that would be reasonable. I'd say it's 6 months, at least 6 months from now. So anyway, that's my thought on that. I don't know how everyone else feels about it, but I think it would be not an unreasonable thing to do. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. We'll go to any other commissioners that have comments first before we go to the public. Commissioner Gossett.
Yes, thank you. Dick, very commendable. I think this is a great way to support our environment, no question about it. The placard, the table placards, are they a stock placard, or is the text, the content going to be designed by the committee specifically for Rehoboth?
Yeah, very good question. There are some stock ones that, for example, Plastic Delaware we are thinking of designing something that is much more specific to our community, to be both educational and interesting and kind of, quote, fun to want to read, so that the message isn't just, another piece of stuff on the table, but that children want to read it, adults want to read it, maybe talk a little bit about it even. So that's the plan, to kind of customize it for our community. And SOLA 3 has generously offered some funding for this, and so I think it's a good way to partner on this. And SOLA 3 would get some credit on there. The City of Rehoboth Beach and Environment Committee, would be mentioned. We could have maybe that's enough for now.
I thank you. I think it, to be more specific to the community is great. I've seen it done in other communities, and actually the placard contains a QR code, which will take you to, a really deep dive into the environmental problems, shall we say, with plastic straws and what have you. So just it's more instructional and what have you. And then, is there a thought from the committee of how we measure success in this?
Well, I think it's going to be measured by how the restaurants roll this out. We're going to have to poll them. And, the chamber has been very cooperative with us around some of these things. I'm hopeful that Carol and her team down the line will be very willing to do a survey again. Perhaps Main Street's interested in doing that and collecting some data for us. I have found that restaurant owners and managers are very interested, if you can catch them when they have a couple of minutes, talking about these things. So I think that's, that's how we're going to learn. Assuming Senate Bill 134 kind of catches on, and even if it doesn't get passed this session, definitely the ground is being laid statewide for this in the next legislative session next year. And if that becomes law, that bans plastic straws except on request. And so, some of these state things may help this a lot in terms of being ahead. But I think it's time for us to take the lead on this. And so we will monitor it closely, Commissioner, because that's critical. We don't want to just do these things and then let it just hang out there and not pay attention to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Commissioner Gay?
Just for clarification, Dick, I think the current number is Senate Bill 140. It was pulled because of the date change and had to be reintroduced. And my understanding is that because of that, it now has a new number. So it's Senate Bill.
Thank you. I know that it was sent out one time to some of us, and then a second time with identified as version 2, supplement 1. So we'll make a note, Susan, that is Senate Bill 140. Thank you very much. So we go to the, in terms of addressing it, we need to address exactly what's in front of us. If we wanted to consider it mandatory, then we would need to postpone a vote to a future date to discuss that first. Commissioner Srnowski?
Yeah, Mayor. I mean, I think we've had some extensive discussions about this already, and I'm not in favor of doing it mandatory at this point. I think we all agreed that it would be voluntary. So if the pleasure is to proceed, I'm happy to make a motion to adopt the resolution.
We're gonna let's go to the public first, if you don't mind. Carol Everhart?
I would agree with Ed that when we had final discussion on this, we talked about this being a voluntary effort, and there was no opposition to that from our members. So I do want to bring that up. And also, the Senate Bill 140 is quite expanded from the straws. As it currently stands, it includes stirrers and cocktail picks, packaging, styrofoam, and it is for packaging of even like takeout food and plastic spoons and all of that. Now, this would, of course, be decided on by the end of June, by June 30th. So with that in mind, I don't know, it's just something to take into consideration as you move forward on this. This would be a state mandate, and this would take effect as currently written on July 1, 2022. So your time frame is the same, but it's quite expanded from just the straws.
And you understand, Carol, I brought that up only FYI because it's definitely not part of our analysis and conversation otherwise.
Correct. I was just made aware of this bill. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Anything else, Carol?
No, sir.
Thank you very much. Suzanne Good?
Good afternoon. Of course, this is a laudable effort to help the environment, our marine life, and everything else. But I'm reading in places like the Wall Street Journal that those with neuromuscular issues are increasingly bringing their own straws. The reason I mention that is that although Commissioner Byrne apparently spoke to 2 restaurants, he underestimated the differential by quite a bit between plastic straws and compostable straws. I mean, even just randomly on the Walmart website, and 100 plastic straws cost 88 cents, whereas 200 plant-based, compostable, biodegradable straws cost between $9 and $37, depending on quite how much they, I guess, protect the environment in terms of where the materials are sourced. And so I think this could be a good effort, but I think the main problems the environmental committee should be addressing are pizza boxes in our black garbage bags, which block the entire bag and force our streets department to use a tremendous number of bags versus what the actual contents of the garbage should require, and also the endless stream of combustion engine cars heading west on the avenue on any good beach day, any Saturday or Sunday in the summer. So I'm just from a resource point of view, I'd like to see more those issues addressed, perhaps with higher priority than this straw issue. Thank you very much.
Suzanne. Dan or Greer, anything on this topic?
Mayor, I'm pretty much echoing what Edward said and Carol Everhart. I'm in agreement with them.
Thank you very much. Walter Brittingham?
No comment, thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Sally Foreman? She's dropped off. Very good. We'll go back to the commissioners. Commissioner Byrne.
Yeah, Mayor, just to clarify, my specific price comparison was between plastic straws and the price of paper straws. And I clearly said that other biodegradable materials were considerably more expensive.
Thank you.
So when you're ready, I'm prepared to make a motion on behalf of the Environment Committee to move this ahead.
Ed was ready to do that. Ed, do you mind if Commissioner Byrne makes a motion?
Of course.
Go ahead, Commissioner Byrne.
Yeah.
So we're looking for a motion to adopt a resolution in front of us. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Edward. Sorry. So I move a resolution, and I guess, what do I read the last part of it?
Yeah, adopt the resolution endorsing the elimination, et cetera.
Yeah. So therefore, not, be it resolved by the commissioners of the city of Rehoboth Beach that the Rehoboth Beach mayor and commissioners request voluntary compliance that as of January 1st, 2022, all eating establishments offer only paper straws on request, excepting for situations where a plastic straw is required. And be it further resolved that the mayor and commissioners support the Rehoboth Beach Environment Committee's request to visit eating establishments to educate owners, managers, and offer table placards to educate and inform patrons concerning single-use plastic straws.
We have a second.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Byrne and a second by Commissioner Chernowski to adopt a resolution endorsing the elimination of single-use plastic straws within the city and establishing a voluntary compliance date for the resolution in front of us. Is there any additional discussion? If not, I'd like all those in favor signify by saying aye and hold your hand up for a second.
Aye.
And the vote is, motion is unanimously approved. Congratulate your Environment Committee and thank them for all their hard work on that, Commissioner Byrne. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and thanks to all of you for the good discussion the past many weeks.
With that, we're going to go to our next item of old business. Old business. Discuss status of and possible changes to the current, which is the fifth modification to the City of Rehoboth Beach proclamation of civil emergency and order concerning the COVID-19 pandemic. Embedded in the agenda is a 28th modification of the Declaration of State of Emergency for the state of Delaware. For those that have been following it, that was issued the 12th of May. Also, for those that have been following it, the governor recently modified that, and there's now a 29th modification of declaration of state of emergency that we have not reacted to. We reacted to the 28th modification by writing up and the mayor issuing a 5th modification of Rehoboth's state of emergency. Now that we have a 28th modification of the Delaware state of emergency in front of us, I would like discussion on a proposal to issue a 6th modification to the Rehoboth Beach state of emergency. Very simply, just as a foundation for discussion, I'd like to indicate what a proposed 6th modification would do, and that is basically that the face recovering requirements within the city of Rehoboth Beach shall be consistent with Governor Carney's 29th modification of the state of emergency declaration and all modifications issued thereafter unless modified by me. Then this also that would be the big change. The rest of it is consistent with what has been before, and that is establishing meterless Monday and reiterates that we have an outdoor policy for outdoor dining that's able to be extended into October 31st. So by this proposal, where the 6th modification adopts the 29th modification of the governor's state of emergency, what it does is it relieves all mask wearing outdoors, except in certain circumstances, limited circumstances. And of course, it also follows the governor's rules with respect to mask wearing indoors. I just want to remind everybody that while we did have some more strict outdoor guidelines at times, the mask mandate for wearing masks on the boardwalk was always governed by the state of Delaware. They're the ones that issued a mask mandate on the entirety of the boardwalk, and we mirrored it. And so now with the 29th modification, that is lifted. And our goal today, or perhaps, depending on the outcome of our discussion, is to mirror the governor's 29th modification, which includes lifting the mask wearing on all outdoor spaces. Would like to address, Sharon, can you help me tag team here with that the governor's 29th modification requires that state employees have to wear masks inside their state office building unless they're in their office by themselves, correct?
Yes.
And then, however, the 29th modification indicates that no masks need to be worn inside by the public of a city hall, but for the public, I'm messing this up. I'm turning it over to the city manager.
No, Mayor, you're absolutely correct. So the updated mask guidance, which came out this week from the governor's office, simply states unvaccinated individuals should still wear masks in public settings. Masks are still required in state buildings, public transit, planes, schools, healthcare facilities, congregate settings, and businesses may impose mask requirements for customers and employees. So basically, the question that I put to the governor's office, masks still required in state buildings, does that include municipal offices? The answer I received back from the governor's office was that municipalities may make their own guidelines. However, it is recommended that masks be worn in government buildings, including City Hall. So the question I put to the mayor, which I'll put to the commissioners also, is what, if your intention is to lift this, what would be your your request for mask wearing in City Hall on June 1st, when we're open back to the public.
So let me try again. If we adopt my proposed sixth modification as I read it, it essentially is adopting the governor's 29th modification, which states that there's no more mask wearing required outside nor inside buildings except under certain circumstances. If we want to mandate mask wearing inside municipal building and inside our commissioner's room, by example, anywhere in City Hall, then we need for our sixth modification to be a little more stringent and mention that. Otherwise, it's not a requirement.
And we would just post a sign, unvaccinated individuals should still wear masks in public settings. I will also just briefly add that the individuals, including the police chief today, but the individuals who deal with the public on a one-to-one basis, front and center at the lobby entrance and also at building and licensing, did indicate to me today that they would feel more comfortable if the public were to wear a mask when they entered the building.
So if we adopted this sixth modification, it's not required, but the commissioners could take action, or you could take action independently to put a sign on the door that says mask recommended.
Yes, the sign on the door would be unvaccinated individuals should still wear masks in public settings.
Okay.
So that would include, that's that requirement.
Okay, okay.
And to make it clearer, the question is to follow the state recommendation whether or not to require masks in the government building in City Hall.
All right. Commissioner LeGree.
I believe that unvaccinated people should get vaccinated. And I don't believe we should require vaccinated people to wear masks in our public buildings. And that's my opinion. I know that if we take the governor's recommendations for state buildings, I understand that we're going to all be wearing a mask for our meetings and everything. And I just would like to leave it at unvaccinated folks. Please wear a mask. Please be vaccinated. And I understand we have some city employees who are not vaccinated. I deplore that. And thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Srnowski, please.
Yeah, Mayor. I agree with Commissioner LeGree completely. I certainly don't want to be sitting in the caucus room for a 3-hour plus meeting wearing a mask. And I'd rather continue Zoom meetings than wear a mask for these meetings. They get pretty long sometimes.
I appreciate your sympathy because these get rather warm. I envy you all at home. Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioners? Glenn, how do we want to approach this? Do we want to do a vote or consensus? I distributed earlier, because I just did it very late, a proposed draft of the sixth modification. It sounds like, at least from two of you that have talked, you would be happy with me just signing this as it is, which again mirrors the 29th modification of state of emergency from Governor Carney, which removes the mask requirements, et cetera, as indicated. Commissioner Gossett?
Just a clarification, that is a sign would be posted that unvaccinated individuals are requested to wear a mask when coming into City Hall?
Unvaccinated individuals should still wear masks in public settings. Actually, the governor's website has flyers, postings that we can download and copy for that purpose.
And just, but that would also include the police department, our parking office.
Correct.
Since we own the museum, would it apply to the museum?
Well, certainly. I think that the memo is unvaccinated individuals should still wear masks in public settings. That's going to be the recommendation. That's what's going to go into our signboards at the end of this meeting today, should the commissioners vote on it. And that's how we'll proceed until further notice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Legree?
I'm fairly certain that the museum would want to follow the governor's requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Calusi?
Yes, I would, I think if there's no more discussion, I think I would like to make a motion that we mirror the governor's 29th amendment and move forward with that.
All right, hold on a second. Let me say. I'm sorry, I was ascertaining whether we should read the entirety of the proposed modification or just go with your motion. And Pat, I think your motion would be fine.
Second.
Let me put one clarifying point.
Okay, Glenn? Yes, sir.
Mayor, as it's drafted now, the only thing that changes from your last modification is subsection 1. So it would change subsection 1 to mirror the 29th modification, but it also says, and all modifications issued thereafter unless modified by the mayor. So I want to be clear with everybody that if there's a 30th modification that comes out from the governor, this order would then mirror the 30th modification unless the mayor brings something to the commissioners to modify it some other way. I didn't want the commissioners to have to keep coming back every time there's a 30th and a 31st and a 32nd to say you're mirroring the governor.
And that would have to be handled by me, actually, because in theory, the 30th modification could be even more restrictive.
That's right.
And return to use of masks. So in that case, I would definitely want to schedule a special meeting and bring it back in front of us. So right now we have a motion in front of us from Commissioner Calusi and a second by Commissioner Sernowski for the mayor to issue a 6th modification, allowing us to mirror the governor's 29th modification in state of emergency. Is there further discussion? Then I want to go to the public before we vote. Commissioner Sernowski?
Yeah, I'm going to ask what is probably a silly question, but why don't we just remove the civil emergency? Whatever the governor mandate is going to supersede, we don't need to mirror that for any reason. It's, if you mandate something, it's mandated statewide. We've already extended outdoor dining through the 31st of October. I'm just not sure that there's anything specific anymore that we're doing that would be more restrictive than what the governor orders. So why keep it in place?
Glenn, maybe you can help me. My position has been that as long as the state of Delaware is in a state of emergency, that we can mirror that. You know, there are still some things within the 29th modification that I believe we support. And if we remove the state of emergency, by the way, the governor's conference this week, he was asked when he was going to remove the state of emergency, and he did not give a date. He just said some point into the future. So if we do remove this state of emergency, or when we get ready to do that, I would have a resolution ready. I think that's the way to go, to allow us to do meterless Mondays, because otherwise meterless Mondays is a code provision. And we would need to do a resolution to do that. So right now I'm comfortable with this 6th modification. And would certainly
add to that, Mayor?
Yeah.
What I would add is that this order allows for outdoor dining, and it allows for the meterless Mondays. To the extent somebody is violating the terms of the outdoor dining, this is the order that gives the city and the city's officers the force of law and able to enforce this, because this is in effect a law. If this goes away, then the only enforcement mechanism we have for outdoor dining and meterless Mondays kind of evaporates as well.
That makes sense, Glenn. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Gay, before we go to the public.
It may be moot now. I was just gonna say, I thought since we were mirroring the governor, that since the state of emergency was still in effect, that ours would be as well until it ends.
Yeah, thank you. With that, we'll go to the public. Carol Everhart, any comments on the pandemic and our path forward?
No comment.
Thank you, Carol. Suzanne Good?
I'd like to say generally, I think former Mayor Paul Coons and you, Mayor Mills, have done an admirable job in navigating this pandemic. My only comment is that at this point, with 1 in 4 Americans either hesitating to get vaccinated or refusing to get vaccinated, people need to make their own decisions and exercise caution, because the honor system that Governor Carney described has not generally worked in our society. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Dan or Greer? They're both off. Walter Brittingham? You're off, and Sally Foreman's off. That's it for the public. With that, we have a motion on the floor for the mayor to update the 6th modification, proclamation of civil emergency, to mirror the governor's 29th modification, with the addition of saying, and all modifications issued thereafter unless modified by me, mayor. All those, we can do a roll call vote if need be, but all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
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 And the motion's carried unanimously. Can I sign this right now?
I don't think we have it in final form yet. Mark Cruz, so is it in final form? Sure. Sign it.
You're witnessing history here. I just wish I had somebody to give the magic pen to afterwards.
Mayor, you can take your mask off.
There we go, folks. This will be, what do we do? Put this online shortly? Very good. Very good. Thank you very much. We'll move. I feel funny taking it off midway, but now we're going to keep on moving on here. I want to thank everybody for getting this far. We're going to get out pretty soon. First business of new business is fix a time and date when the commissioners will sit as a board of appeals to hear appeals timely, filed in writing, taken from the annual assessment as determined by the tax assessor. To make this happen, I have checked with Donna Moore, our election official that would need to be present, with our tax assessor that would need to be present, with the property owner that's made the appeal to be present, and of course, the commissioners. I propose and would hope to entertain a motion that we set the date of Friday, June 18th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which is an hour before our normal regular meeting. Friday, June 18th at 1 o'clock, when the commissioners will sit as the Board of Appeals. I would entertain a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Who moved? Jay? We have a motion by Commissioner Jay Legree and a second by Commissioner Dick Byrne to set the date of the Board of Appeals for Friday, June 18th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Is there any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Where it says here that they file their appeal in writing, is there a deadline for that?
Yes.
Yes, there is.
Do we know what it is, or is it a certain number of days before our meeting, or what?
I think it's been 10 days of posting, the list was posted.
They were within the required time, and I think that was 10 days. Within 10 days of.
We don't know the exact date, but it has been timely filed and verified.
Okay. I guess I'm just wondering if we have any appeals. I mean, if there's a chance.
We have, well, we would not be setting this if we didn't have an appeal.
Okay.
And we do, and we have one case.
Okay.
So shouldn't be too difficult to squeeze in before our regular meeting. I don't know where I am. It's been a long day. Have I called a vote?
I do not think you called a vote for it. You called a vote yet.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion setting the Board of Appeals date for Friday, June 18th at 1 o'clock p.m. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand, please.
Aye.
Aye.
And thank you, and it unanimously passes. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to commissioner announcements and comments. Commissioner Byrne, I think you have something to share with us, please.
Yeah, I have two items. I'll try to make them quick. Thanks, Mayor. When Commissioner Calusi brought up the idea of artwork and the street barriers maybe 8 weeks ago, that kind of triggered a thought for me that wouldn't it be interesting, fun, educational to have some young people's art if we're going to do something. Well, I have worked with a couple of volunteers on the Environment Committee and with a teacher at Rehoboth Elementary School who is both a science teacher and oversees science education for fifth graders across the Cape District. And so having discussed this with the mayor recently and with the city manager, and more recently with the director of public works, we have fifth graders that are doing small poster art. I mean, literally small, on 8.5 by 11, because that's what their lamination machine will handle. And so they're doing artwork around environmental themes, primarily recycling. They like the idea of recycling straws. The instructor, Jacqueline Sissel, is the instructor that brought the kids in front of the commissioners 3 years ago on the banning the straw program. She is the one that has been wonderful to work with on this. And so there will be fifth graders student artwork that will be displayed on the inside, not the street side, the inside of the street barriers. I've worked with Kevin on how we're going to use, he's not going to, the street department's not going to, but our volunteers and the teacher and the kids will be putting these up with a type of duct tape that Kevin will be providing. And they understand that the artwork may only look presentable for a couple of weeks, depending on the weather. But I think it'll be fun. It'll be educational. It's a nice opportunity to partner with kids and our local school. Second item is that with support from the city manager and her team, I recently, made a formal proposal to Senator Lopez and Speaker Schwarzkopf and asked for money for the beautification of our second gateway, the public triangle that sits on State Road that has always looked shabby, has been improved recently with one of our new signs, but underneath the sign is still a shabby mess of weeds. And so I've secured $50,000 to support a gardening project there that will be irrigated and it will meet the interests of DelDOT and follows a plan that Katie Downs and Liz Lingo have drafted. So that's going ahead. It's post July 1 CTF money out of the senator's office. And that will probably be instigated. We talked about it a bit on Commissioner Gay's Tree and Green Infrastructure Committee this morning. Probably be instigated in the fall, starting September, October. And I think it'll be a wonderful addition to our second gateway in and out of the city.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Commissioner. Commissioner Sernowski, you have an announcement or comment, please?
Yeah, Mayor, it's more of a request, I think, to put two agenda items on the topics to go on the agenda for the June workshop. One is several businesses and residents have asked me why the city has codes that don't allow outdoor live music or amplification. So I would ask that we put it on the agenda for us to have a preliminary discussion about the codes that dictate that. And secondly, the city manager and I have been working together after we realized that the HRC Municipal Equality Index was lower than I think any of us expected. So there's some administrative things we can do and some perhaps some ordinances that can be changed that would improve that score that the city has. So I'd like to add that to the workshop meeting as well, just to have a preliminary discussion about it and for the city manager and I to outline what we potentially could do administratively or through ordinance. So I'd ask for those two topics to be included. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Comments? Review future meeting dates. I have May 25th already noticed. That's next Tuesday as a special COVID meeting at 3 o'clock, if needed. Do we need to conduct that meeting? I'm seeing heads shook no, so I'm going to cancel that meeting. And, you know, obviously we can reschedule with 7 days notice if need be. The other next meeting after that is June 7th at 9 o'clock, which is a workshop meeting for the commissioners. And it's our first in-person meeting back in the commissioners' room. Public will be invited. And with the caveat that if they're not vaccinated, they need to wear a mask, otherwise not. I think that's all on my agenda right now. We've had citizen comment. If there's no further comment from the commissioners, I want to thank our watchers and those that participated. Also thank our commissioners and the staff, Glenn and Sharon, for being here. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.